Hi, I'm Ali Walker, and welcome back to This Is How We Feel. I am so excited today because I have my first guest on the podcast. My guest is Daniel Teitelbaum, and he is joining me from an amazing organization called Playful Thinking. Now, the reason Daniel is joining me is because, for those of you who are following along with these experiments, I've decided to turn my life into a series of experiments. That sounds so strange unless you understand the context. The context being that we don't change our behavior through knowledge alone. We change our behavior through curious experiments. And so I thought, what happens if we turn our life into an experiment and we try something new each week, and then the week after, we talk about it, we think about how it went, we review the data and the experience. So Daniel's here joining us today. Daniel, hi. Thank you for being here as my first guest.
Hi, Ali. Thank you. I'm very, very honoured. I'll always be the first guest. So.
Okay, please tell us a little bit about you. I would much prefer, rather than me just reading out an introduction, I would much prefer to hear from you in your own words, why you became interested in play and how you came to be doing what you're doing at Playful Thinking.
I got into this work by my interest in education. I'd started working in education in kind of a few different capacities, but one of it was running after school programs for kids and on the weekends. And I could just see in that experience how central and important play was to the learning experience. We started every session with a game, and the game would allow us to explore themes that kind of came up, the interactions, communication. It might be even a trigger for some of the content discussion, depending on what you put into the game. And seeing how important play was to education, I continued my interest in education through play. And I was also then studying philosophy. And through my work in philosophy, I started to work with an organization called the School of Life. And their global mission is to help develop greater emotional intelligence in adults. And part of their suite of things they use is philosophy, but also inspired by psychology, culture, history, film, art, literature, and drawing the lessons from kind of humanity and all the stuff we've produced. But one part of that was play and how important play is in our emotional intelligence. So I started working more in the intersection of play and emotional intelligence. And that kind of moved into also play in communication and therefore play in the workplace. And so as these kind of themes and ideas came up across all of my work, whether it's education or emotional intelligence or communication or working with people, play was there. Play was kind of central and important, either because I had the lens of play and could kind of see and draw it out, but even with just a little bit of digging, you can see this strange idea of play, this thing that's kind of, it's hard to define its shape. We'll try to get some more shape to it because it's a really expansive concept that I think we only really have a bit of sliver of an understanding of. And so as I could see play in all of these things, I wanted to tell people that play is important. It's a part of our development from birth all the way through our lives. It's something that we have had different type of relationship to in different cultures over time. And in our day and age today, there really is a lack of play, a deficit of play in adult life. And it's really bad. It's really important to include play in our life in lots of ways. It's something that now I guess I've made my mission is to talk about and show and to help bring play into our adult lives and to also just give a deeper and more nuanced understanding of what play is, what it looks like, what it involves and what it's connected to.
Fantastic. So let's get going on that mission today and help the people who are listening. Why is it as we get older, we become more serious or perhaps more resistant to play? And the reason I'm asking that question is that what I noticed through my experiment last week is that I thought play would just make everything lighter and a bit more silly. What ended up happening was it was a little bit effortful. I had to be really conscious of playing. I have to make myself play, which felt counterintuitive. And then there was also resistance that came up to play. I was always in my head thinking, is this going to make me fitter? Is this going to make me more efficient at something? What's this going to help me with? I was always trying to tie it to some kind of adult outcome. Do you see that in your work, that as we age, we become way more serious and resistant to play?
Absolutely. There are lots of reasons and actually different points in our life where that occurs. I usually like to flip this back on you and ask, reflecting on your own experience of higher and lower moments of playfulness in your life, can you identify any key moments where play seemed to drop off? Maybe you didn't notice at the time, but reflecting back, there might be milestones or markers or things that kind of switched for you. Do you have any of those that come to mind?
I think the image that came to mind as you were asking that question is, where you get to an age where it feels ridiculous to skip? When little kids skip a lot?
Yeah.
And I have 3 children, and so I see this moment where skipping just stops. And that's what came up for me. I know you asked me about me. I think it's probably somewhere between late primary school and into high school when you start thinking of yourself as a small adult rather than a child. And I always wanted to be taken very seriously.
Okay.
So when I was I'm one of 5 children, but I was the oldest girl, second oldest in the family, but the oldest girl and hyper responsible. And so I always thought being an adult was being taken seriously and being very sophisticated, very the opposite things to play. So for me, it was maybe even earlier, but I always love things like, I have this memory of my brother and I putting on shows for our family friends and our extended family, the tennis racket as the guitar. So my family was very good at play in terms of incorporating music into everything. Music was always a part of our lives. But in terms of silliness or being goofy or I'm just thinking of Goofball Island on that movie Inside Out for the kids. Very much late childhood into high school, I'd say puberty is a bit of a turning point where you start taking yourself a bit more seriously.
Yeah, and so a lot of the pressure can start with ourselves, and part of that is at a point you want to sit at the adults' table, and unfortunately our cultural association between play and childhood and seriousness and adulthood is very clear dichotomies and almost mutually exclusive, which is not at all the case. Serious play is a huge world of understanding how play helps us do serious things, from changing the world to changing ourselves. But we create this association, especially as we're children, and we don't necessarily have it corrected or clarified. We get encouraged for the kinds of serious work we do, and we stop getting the same validation of how adorable to see you do the free play stuff, and so we start to put that pressure on ourselves. At the same time, depending on the parents you had or the family and family friends around you, there's a different value or permission placed on silliness and foolery. And there are a lot of people who experience have quite a traumatic relationship to play growing up, and it's because it can be very clearly discouraged from playful behaviours, and therefore we get the message quite quickly, and we fit into adult life well because so much of it is set up for serious interactions, and then we get our leisure time prescribed in a particular way. There are some very clear activities that adults are allowed to do as part of their play. Alcohol is obviously a big one. Organised sport. It's again, these structures kind of value certain things over other things. Their priority of what kind of ways to behave, ways to communicate, ways to express yourself are acceptable or not in these adult prescribed leisure activities, and we fit into them, and it's comfortable. We become more self-conscious as we get older, and part of that means what is it to fit in, and we look for the cultural cues, and we go, adulthood is seriousness, and I'm going to get respect and validation for my seriousness more so than my playfulness. So that's another part of it.
And do you see that? Yeah. Do you see that in your work? Do you see that resistance show up when you go? So tell me about a typical project for you where you might go into an organisation to do. Do you call it serious play?
No, I'm actually now using play more and more at the background of what I do and teaching skills or skills like communication skills, public speaking skills, negotiation skills, conflict resolution skills. Do a lot of that, and everything. Play is now kind of more the thing that it's made of rather than what I'm calling.
Isn't
It.
that interesting? And so it almost has to come in through a back door, because if you take it in through the front door, people might, oh, that's not serious enough for our outcomes or our KPIs.
Yeah, definitely. But I don't have to use the word play to be doing or talking about play in a very big way, because problem solving is playful. Problem solving is one of our most enjoyable ways to play. So even a conversation is active play. It's playful. There's an unknown direction that you're going in. You don't know what the script is. There's an improvisational quality to it. We get to know each other and learn through it, and that's all. That's all play. Play is at the heart of those kinds of experiences. It's what we're wired to do. It's why I can quote some people, but Johann Huizinga is an incredible philosopher and thinker about play, often quoted in the 1940s. I think he wrote his book Homo Ludens, which is, instead of Homo sapiens, it's playful man, and that is to say this is really the thing that describes us best, as what not just drives us but explains how we do things. And your example of crafting small experiments, I mean, that's kind of the story of human evolution and science, is to craft small experiments. Some succeed, some don't. It's kind of baked into the universe in how it kind of evolves, is that it's got a deep playfulness to it, and we reflect that. And so it's really is everywhere.
I'm just reflecting on everything you're saying, because if I look back in my life and think about the experiences that have stood out for me as the peak moments of my life, they are all inherently playful or creative. And yet, if I think about how I structure my time, what I prioritize, it's the opposite of that. And I don't think I'm alone. I think it's characteristic of adult life that we do, as you say, we get more validation for being serious. So let's now move into so what? How do we become more playful? What are some concrete practical ideas that you have for people who are wearing a lot of armor, and that armor might come in the form of parenting, responsibilities at work, other family responsibilities that you're carrying, mental health challenges? What are some things that we can do, or even neurodivergence, to bring in playfulness to our lives so that it becomes a practice rather than a nice to have?
Yeah, well, a few things. And one thing I will say is that making a structure around it, so crafting a set of experiments you're going to explore, having a podcast around it is also maybe another layer of accountability, is really great. Scheduling time for play is something you have to do in adult life. It's not antithetical to play for it to be scheduled and prepared. It's not. That's why the vision of play, of freeness and running around in colour and creativity, is a wonderful vision of play. But it's, again, very much a tip of the iceberg of how we can relate to play. Permission, so scheduling and really taking quite seriously the, I guess, hygienic nature of play. You don't schedule to brush your teeth because it comes second nature, but you might schedule exercise and therapy session and all these other things. So schedule play in the same way. Permission is another really, really important thing, and it kind of takes a little bit of deep work and understanding your relationship to play and your background to play. Stuart Brown is another big name and noted author in the world of play. He's a psychiatrist who was asked to look into psychopathy of serial killers in the Texan prison system. He didn't have a background in play. He was just there to explore what are the commonalities between these people that might explain their behaviour. And he found a very, very strong correlation between extreme play deficit. So I'm not saying if you're not getting enough play, you're going to run around doing things, but
Wow, though,
extreme
that's
play
so
deficit.
interesting. And
Yeah.
what do you mean by extreme play deficit? Obviously, people who don't play or have never played. Is that what you're
Yeah,
getting
often
at?
where you were really weren't given the time, space, or permission to play throughout your whole of your childhood. You might have never really had celebrated birthdays and things like that. Might not have had many moments of play with friends. So we're talking at the extreme end is there's correlation there. But then he wanted to follow this thread, and so he started taking the play histories of thousands of people of all parts of the life's experience, and he found a continued correlation between achieving the kind of we might say key markers of a good life, a successful work, successful relationships, loving and friendship, self-assessment being good, a general understanding of your own happiness, more play, more of that. Less play, you go further down, you fall on all those key markers of a good life. And so he started the National Institute for Play in order to continue the research, but also advocate for the importance of play as a health issue. I've just lost track of why I told you about Dr. Stuart Brown.
So I was asking for tips, but then you talked about scheduling it and giving yourself permission.
That's right. And so he, as an intro to permission, as one way to understand what kind of permission you might need, other than me telling you how important it is. And that's also, you asked earlier, and I didn't give a full enough answer of how I enter into the workspaces to convince people of play. I start having to persuade them of the value of it using the science, the history, the insight. You know, there are lots of business case studies of play being extremely valuable and powerful in key moments of business history. So,
And what might that look like? What are some examples of business taking play seriously?
Okay, let's give you. This is I can tell you something actually from Stuart Brown's book. He talks about the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory were in the 90s experiencing the retirement of lots of really incredible engineers who helped get us to the moon, and they were hiring the best and brightest from all the universities, but were finding that their problem-solving skills, generally speaking, weren't as strong as the generation before, and so they hired a consultant to come in and kind of figure out what was different here, and through the process discovered that there was something the older generation did that the younger generation didn't do quite as much, and that were hobbies like fixing your own bike, or making a transistor radio, kind of working in the real world with your hands in a system that actually has tangible and not as much theoretical. And what they found is that when you're actually used to making stuff, you take into account all of these other things that the other engineers just didn't have through the lived experience of play around it. So their problem solving skills weren't quite as good, and so what they started to do was ask people about their, as in graduates and interviewees, about their history making things with their hands or playing with things like that as a key marker of their ability to solve problems.
So this is interesting. And now I realize we haven't actually defined play yet, because when you're talking about that, I'm thinking I would call that tinkering, which is then another tangent altogether. I would still think of that as being something instrumental and useful for one's development as a person. If we get back to basics again, I know you said it's tricky to define. How do you think of play?
Anything and everything is play unless proven otherwise.
Okay. All right. So if we can, I think maybe that helps with permission.
Yeah, well, I guess in a way I'm, throwing it out there.
Yeah.
But in a sense, it's more true than the opposite. And even insofar as, did you ever think of a conversation as an act of play?
No. But now that you mention it, it is my most preferred way to play.
Do you feel in conversation often you have this excitement about where things could go?
Of course.
A freeness about what you can do?
Yes.
Perhaps losing a sense of time and the joy of it all?
Yes.
Does that sound like play?
Yes. So maybe part of permission is actually realizing that a lot of what we're already doing, we are still being playful. Because I had this narrative in my mind that I did not play enough. The only time I played was when I went to a party, and I'm putting play in inverted commas, and when I went to a party and I danced. That was my idea of, that sort of losing yourself in time and
Definitely.
space. Yeah.
Definitely. And those kinds of experience are a play experience of a subset of a category that are kind of like peak experiences that you might have. But that doesn't mean that it has to look like that at all for everyone. Some peak experiences can be finishing a Sudoku, and if you're really into Sudoku and you kind of get this great joy from having solved a
That's my
problem and
mum. Yeah.
euphoric from having, everyone was like, you might go, okay, I've solved another Sudoku, not such a big deal. But we have a template of what we find joyful or exciting or not joyful, and it can shift, and we can experiment with it and find which parts of it we might want to expand or explore. And so I think you're absolutely right, and I do say that the permission can come from a narrative in your head while you're doing the dishes, where you're not just doing the dishes. You might be, I don't know,
I put
cleaning up.
music on. I put music
What?
on when I'm
You can put
doing.
music on, but you can
Yeah.
also let's say you could commentate yourself doing the dishes, like only one more glass to go, and here he goes, puts in the washer. You can start to add a layer of playfulness in your imagination silently. No, it doesn't. Looks like you're cleaning the dishes.
Yes.
There are that's one way to, if you're interested in imagination. But what I think another way into permission is, I was going to say about Stuart Brown, is you take your history. You remember what things kind of brought you joy and playfulness growing up as well. Is a great way to start. Another is to play with people is really beautiful and wonderful, and there's lots of great solo play that's really great. But if you can find a point of connection, the way someone else likes to play, then your likelihood of doing that thing is much greater. Your likelihood of feeling the sense of permission, because you can give each other permission, is a great start. We're both doing it, so if we get caught, at least we're in this together. And getting caught being playful is also, something to work with as an experience as an adult. But that's how we feel, and often. And I guess I would love for a lot of people engage in plays. Look at me, this is a rebellious adult act, and rebellion is also a form of play. Critique is a form of play in a way as well. But definitely do it if rebelliousness brings you joy, and that's how you need to do it. But it's not rebellious to play as an adult. It's actually you have the permission as an adult to not just respond to what's expected of you, but to define for yourself and others what's expected of us. So we have the ability to voice what we think should be expected, not just respond to it. So we have that even permission as well. Movement, things that you already liked, other people, just exploration. All of these things are a way into play, and starting as small as you like is valuable. We definitely get freaked out by the KPI of play being visibly exuberant.
I like that. And so what would you say to people, just to wrap up, what would you say to people if they're starting now in becoming more playful and might have some resistance around it? What are some things that they can do immediately?
Find things you're already doing, things already in your routine. You might have a drive or a walk somewhere. Schedule that thing you're going to do, you're going to add some element of play to it. So let's say you drive to work, and you're going to say, in my drive to work, I'm going to reach for greater playfulness. And what that might look like for you is a game of I Spy with yourself. I don't know, where you're like, or a noticing. There's actually a beautiful book, Alexandra Horowitz, on looking, where she walks around her New York suburb block with 11 different people, including a dog, and observes through their eyes. And so, for example, she might walk with an archaeologist, an archaeologist who might go, oh, well, those date back, those bricks and buildings kind of date back to here, and, a historian, or I think she walks with somebody who's an expert on wildlife in urban environments, and so points all that out. And so she walks the same block many times with different people giving her a different perspective, and with the dog, seeing through the dog's eyes of how does they experience the landscape. So you can put a lens over the way you're seeing things, and as you drive, I don't know, spot your favorite buildings, or the color green, or probably too common, green, purple. See if you can find a purple on your way to work. If you can implant a little bit of make the decision to include some play in these already occurring parts of your life, then that will be valuable. And actually, one other thing I guess you said earlier about rest. I think it might have been before we recorded, but about you found it effortful to engage back in play, and it is, but it's definitely worth the effort. And there's a beautiful woman named Gwen Gordon who speaks about play as well, and she talks about how one of the biggest obstacles in adult life to play is rest. So play, we often go, oh, I need a rest, so I need rejuvenation, I need to do some play, but we're often even too tired to engage in the rejuvenation of play, because play takes concentration, it engages you, so you do need energy in order to actually do some play. The benefits of the other side is energy well spent, rather than sitting in front of the TV, which, enjoy television, but 6 hours in front of the TV or 4 hours in front of the TV is not going to engage you and create that same rejuvenation that play will, but we don't have the energy for much more often. So rest is also an essential component of a life that includes play, and so also focus as intently on getting the right amount of rest.
It's interesting that you finish on that, because two of the unexpected benefits of the experiment for me, one was that I gave myself more permission to rest when I needed to, because I'd been engaged in prioritizing play. It then allowed me to prioritize other things that mattered, that didn't necessarily have these adult outcomes attached. But the other unexpected benefit was greater empathy. Now, I pride myself on being empathetic.
Yeah.
But when I was prioritizing play, it hooked me into empathy in a way I hadn't been before, because I was often thinking to myself, well, I want to be playful with another. So I was starting to key into what is play for this person? What would they like? If I put on a song, what do they like? What's going to activate play in this other person? And so then it deepened the empathy, which was also unexpected.
Yeah, well, there's absolutely nothing more powerful on earth for giving an experience of empathy than play. We have to get into the minds of the other person we're playing with in almost all play contexts, even the competitive ones. It's great to hear that you've included that. It's seriously important, and that's why we need it so desperately to give ourselves the permission to find playfulness with other people.
Lovely, wonderful. Thank you so much. My takeaway is to just try to get under that armor a little bit, that adult armor, because it will give us so many benefits, not least of which is greater empathy.
Yeah, and do it for other people. So we're getting under our own armor is more difficult, but we can help each other by helping disarmor each other when we talk about it. Let me take your armor off and you'll take mine is also a really good way to help de-armor.
What a lovely way to finish. Daniel, thank you for joining me as my first ever guest. I've had such an exciting, fun, playful time speaking to you. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Ellie. I've had a great time.